It's the first week of August, and throughout the Midwest, the bait fish have all grown to a size that they've started to scatter. They're not confined to the weeds anymore. And what that does is it makes it so that the walleyes scatter as well because they're chasing them around feeding. But when it gets to a point that they're spread out all over the lake, the best way to catch them is to pull crankbaits. And I'm going to show you how to do that with Leadcore line this week on the water. The biggest key to what we're doing today is trying to nail down the right lure. And people talk about Leadcore, and what I'll tell you is just trolling Leadcore line is not really the answer. It's not really the key to what I'm doing today. What I'm doing is I'm just using the Leadcore to deliver the right lure to the fish. Now we're out here on Mille Lacs Lake, and this year we've got two things the walleyes are eating. There's two primary forage bases. And there he is, he's just coming up to the surface. That's a big fish. There's two primary forage species though that these fish are eating this year. They're eating perch like they always do. And this fish here, this is on a perch emulating bait. And then they're also eating tullibes because we have had a tullibee explosion in this lake. And what you need to do, let's see if we can get this guy in there. Look at that, that's a good way to start the day right there. It's a pretty fish too. But what you really need to do is you need to focus on using the correct lures. And it's not just about choosing the right shape, it's about choosing the right colors and a combination of all of it. One of the things I want to show you, now this fish came on a perch colored river rocker, and we'll see if we can get him out of here without getting all torn up. This one came on a perch colored river rocker. And the reason I'm using this river rocker is because this is about the size of all the perch in the lake right now, okay? They're not real big, but they're just big enough that the walleyes have started eating them. There we go. So that's a great lure right there. You can see what I'm using. I got a little bit of blood on me there, but that fish will be just fine. We'll get him back in the water real quick. That's a great walleye. I'm gonna throw this one back right away because in the heat of summer like this, I hate to keep a fish out of water too long. So we'll get this fish back in the water and then I'll show you the lures that I'm using here. When I'm looking at lures though to pull on Leadcore, the number one thing you need to understand is it's really not about the Leadcore, it's about the lure. The lure is what's catching the fish. When I say the Leadcore just delivers it, what the Leadcore does is get a small lure or a lure that would not dive deep on its own with monofilament down into the depths. Now this is a perch colored river rocker, and this thing on Mille Lacs Lake is just a killer. And you know, I'll cycle through colors throughout the day, but this is the perfect size because this is about the size that all the perch are right now. But there's another thing going on out here this year, and that is that the tullibes have just been crazy. And you know, we're getting this dye off of the tullibes too. So it's making it so that they're very easy prey for the walleyes. So what I'm also doing is I'm using a Smithwick Rogue. And what that allows me to do is have something that's got high flash and a longer, slimmer profile. Those are the two baits that I'm gonna wanna come up here with and pull day in, day out to catch fish. Now when the fish switch over to a shad style bait, and they do that throughout the year because the perch look a lot like a shad bait, that's when I just go to a shadling. But any of these three baits are real good right now. Now today I only have myself in the boat, so I can only cycle through one lure at a time, and it makes it tougher. But normally if you have 3 or 4 people in the boat, it makes it a lot easier to keep going through your lures. Now I want to talk about Leadcore real quick. Like I told you, Leadcore is only used to get lures down to a level in the water column that they couldn't get to on their own with their dive curve. So what you want to remember with Leadcore line is it dives 5 feet per color at 2 miles an hour. So now that fish I just got, I was out in 36 feet of water, I was 5.5 colors back, and then I have a 30-foot leader. That leader is just a simple silver thread Excalibur. It's 30 feet long, and then I tie on a snap. Once I do that, I can get this lure to anywhere I want. Now at 5.5 colors, I was down about 28 feet with the Leadcore, another couple feet, 2 or 3 with the river rocker. So that allowed me to be running that lure right in that 30-foot zone, and these fish were laying in 35, 36 feet. I gotta get turned around and get back on those fish, go back up there and get more of them because they're piled up there real thick. changed up my trolling run here. I'm running over water right now that I haven't been on all week. And the reason I've done it is it just seems that with this wind today, these fish have moved a little bit. And I'm hoping that they've all moved south. I started seeing more of them south, but one of the things you can do is when I pulled up to make my next pass, I actually cruised at about 7-8 miles an hour, and I can see fish on my graph at that kind of speed. You gotta drive around and you gotta find the fish, and you gotta find the height in the water column they're at. And right now, most of these fish are adjacent to structures. I'm just off a gravel bar right now, but I've actually slid down a little further south of it, and I'm in 31.5 feet of water here. This fish is getting close, so I'm gonna have to get the net here. There you go. But like I was saying, I'm just out off this edge, and that's the key here. Very few of these fish, he got himself unhooked there for me even. Very few of these fish are actually gonna be up on tops of structures right now. They may slide up there here and there, but for the most part, there's bait all over, so it's so easy for them to cruise anywhere. And that's why they're out here. And that's why there's some up, there's some down. So when you're out looking for the locations that you want to fish leadcore in and pull these cranks at this time of year and this week, you want to look for areas adjacent to structure, but instead of staying right on that edge, I mean, right now I'm a 1/4 mile out off it. And it's okay to work those areas. Sometimes I'll be a 1/2 mile out off it. But just remember, these walleyes are always gonna relate somewhat to that structure, so stay in the neighborhood. I don't wanna get 4 miles away from it. But if I'm a 1/4 mile, 1/2 mile, I'm gonna find fish that are feeding just like that guy right there. A lot of weeks I tell you about equipment being stuff you probably already have and that you don't need anything specialized, but I'll tell you what, for leadcore, you do want to make a little bit of a purchase and buy yourself the right equipment. You can see I'm using a line counter reel that's large enough that it holds 10 colors of leadcore line. Now you may not need all 10 colors, but if you break some off here or there, you can get by and get through your day without having a problem. This fish is up on the surface, and when a fish gets up on the surface like that, you want to keep him there. You don't want to let him get back down, so I'm just going to stay on him and keep reeling. Then the rods I'm using, these are 6-foot 6-inch trolling rods, and these have a very soft tip. And the reason I'm using these rods today is because you can tell by the wind I'm fighting out here, it is pretty rough. I mean, the boat's bouncing up and down a lot. When that boat starts bouncing up and down as much as it's doing today, what happens is you get a lot of surge in your lines. Now I've got 9-foot trolling rods that a lot of times I'm running off the sides, but if I run those today, they're further up the boat, and what happens is every time that boat goes up in the air, they surge more. So I'm running the short one today, and the reason for that is this tip is so soft that it absorbs a lot of that surge that I'm getting, and you don't want your baits constantly going like this. If your baits are always going like that, it's gonna cost you bites because you're gonna pull right past some of these fish and they won't feel like it looks natural, okay? The leadcore line I'm using, it's 18-pound leadcore. I'm tying it directly with an overhand knot right to 10-pound monofilament. Now I'm using silver thread, and it works great for this situation. I'm running about 30 feet of it, but a lot of people use a swivel and I don't, and I'll tell you why. The swivel, when you're reeling in a fish and that rod's bent, it can get stuck in that top eye. And I don't want to take that chance because that's when you got to drop that tip to get the swivel through. And a lot of times at that point, you lose your fish. So all I do is I tie a double overhand knot, and it's as simple as putting the 2 lines together, and then I just turn it over and I go through twice and pull, clip off the tag ends, and I'm all set to go. Tie a swivel, or not a swivel, but a snap on the end, put on your crankbait and send it out. And ironically, I just made a change to this color. I just switched to a Smithwick Rogue in Fire Tiger and then put a keeper in the boat. That one's gonna go home with us. Today has been one of those days where you work for every single fish you catch, and we have. It's, you know, there's weeks with this show that you don't see half, 3/4 of the fish we catch because there's just not time to show you. And today, we have honestly had to work hard to catch every fish we've caught, and it's still been a good day on the water. But you gotta just keep working at it. And you know, you look at what's coming up for the next week, and I'll tell you what slowed things down today. We've been fighting this wind all day, and it's been a north wind. This is just a good old-fashioned cold front, and it's blown all day and made it tough. But the good news is that this should be it. The way the rest of the week looks, besides Saturday, it looks like you should be able to come on out here, be able to troll a lot of these areas and avoid some of this big wind and some of this front stuff. And if you can do that, you're gonna catch fish all week. The other thing about this pattern is it's gonna hold up now through the end of August. Once these fish are out here, until things really start cooling off, and that's usually about the beginning of September that the water temps start cooling off. This pattern holds up, and the fish will, you know, they'll bite, but they really like that stable weather, and you've got some of that coming up this week. So keep that in mind. Get out and pull some Leadcore. That fish got himself unhooked for us too. There he goes. There was one major key to catching these fish today, and it was color. I went through a lot of different lures out there today, but it came back to the same old standbys that catch fish for me all the time on Mille Lacs Lake on Leadcore, Rogues and River Rockers. And the key was just getting to the correct colors. Now these 4 were the colors today, but that doesn't mean they're gonna be the colors tomorrow. Pick up a variety of both of these lures, bring them with you up here to Mille Lacs Lake or Lake of the Woods or wherever you're going in the Midwest trolling deep this week, and you're gonna catch plenty of fish. For more current and up-to-date information, check back with us next week. I'm Jon Thelen. We'll catch you on the water.